Hello everybody, my name is Joshua Pienaar. I'm from the Central Queensland University in Australia. My colleagues and I would like to share the preliminary findings of a project that we've been working on recently about the successfulness and effectiveness of online submissions for mathematics tests and assignments. Now, the world has been definitely a changing place, and especially in terms of education with the internationalisation of universities. We see universities all over the world getting campuses across different states, across different countries, and it seems that the educational boundaries have definitely crumbled in the last number of years. Now this has brought along another development, let's call it the development for students, because now students have access to different universities, different types of offerings, and they can basically shop around for the type of knowledge that they require and they need, and it's all about the convenience that they're after. So based on that, there's been changes in the student cohort. Let's call it the student service level agreement that we have with them has now changed. Students now have access to resource material right through the year, at any time, any place. They use mobile phones to communicate with the learning management system, and it's become really easy for them to communicate with lecturers and see if they can get feedback online, making life completely different to the days that I went to university. Another issue that's come to play is also the change in the type of students that we have. No longer is it traditional students, the 17 to 25-year-olds, or now it's more a diverse group of students that's all across the world, different states, different countries, and with different educational backgrounds. And that presents a challenge in itself for the lecturers and for universities or any kind of educational organization. For us in this project, we were focusing specifically on mathematics. And when you think about it, mathematics is basically the backbone of anything, the bottom line of any project, the end of the line for any kind of financial transaction. And sometimes it's amazing to see that many students do not have the command of the basic knowledge of mathematics. So it's also difficult when we start thinking about how to do mathematics training online. Thinking back to the old days when I was still at school, we all did it on paper, and it was quite easy. You had your piece of paper in front of you, you had handouts, and you can do your example over and over again until you knew exactly what to do and understand the basic principles. So the transition to the new world for us was some kind of a challenge. We had to ask the question, how do students learn mathematics? And a lot of that had to do with our previous research and the way that we perceive that they learn. So the basics of mathematics, and obviously a big part of that is of course the handwriting skills and how they learn it and how they use handwriting as part of their submission. So typically all the students that we used to have in the old days, they submitted their assignments written on a piece of paper. Alright, so it would just be a typical piece of paper like that, and they would be quite happy to submit their assessment based on that. It would be a hard copy, and they would hand it in at the local office of the university, which would then be picked up by the lecturer. Similarly, for lecturers, this has presented a change to how we do things as well. In the old days, we used to have a favorite pen, a red pen. I don't seem to have a red pen on my desk today, but I remember using a red pen every day, marking assessment items and giving students feedback on there, and then of course recording the results in either document form or in Excel, any kind of learning management system that we had. With the changes to the new world, let's call it the brave new world, where everything is now online, things have completely changed. Everything is electronic, and we are going to go into a paperless environment. Well, basically not go, we're already there, and now things have changed a little bit. However, students still learn mathematics the same way. The basic principles have not changed. Mathematics is still mathematics, and the way the students teach themselves how to do it does not differ tremendously from how we used to do it in the old days. They still use paper, they still exercise it over and over again. When we went online, there was an idea that everything should be submitted online, which made administrative sense. All right, so it's a lot easier because you can find everything in a single spot, and you can track the student's progress, and you can see when they submitted. And of course, from a assignment management point of view, that makes things a lot easier. So for the students, the change was, how do we submit our papers? Do we still do it hard copy? And that option suddenly disappeared because everything now had to be online. So we thought about typing, and students don't like the typing of formulas and mathematics in, let's say, Microsoft Word. And I sort of can identify with that, because if you've worked with the formula writer in Microsoft Word trying to prepare your lectures, it's not an easy task to do. So it's quite difficult for the students as well, because many of them won't be tech savvy and they haven't worked in the computer industry for many years, and therefore they don't have that knowledge of how to run a formula writer in a software package, for instance. So they would prefer to still write it out and then scan it and submit it from there, or even take a photo of that presentation, and that would then take care of the submission. So the question that we had to ask is, of course, how do we satisfy both of these areas? All right, so the big issue for us is, of course, the students on the one side, they have to submit their assessment items, and on the other side, for the lecturers, they have to get everything online and provide feedback in an online environment. So that was the big task of this whole experiment that we went through. So just a little bit of background on this study and how we used to do things at the university. Pre-2013, we still sent out hard copy resource materials to the students, and we just used the normal postal system for this. And of course, students had an opportunity to attend the classes face to face, and then there was also an opportunity for them to come into distance mode. So distance mode was not very well attended, and the prime delivery mode was face-to-face. Postal submissions on campus, hand-ins or collections was the way that we did it. And then in 2013, the university decided to go full online with everything. All right, so some of the disciplines, for instance, the built environment where I focus in, we started going online in 2011, and the university has since taken up on that, and that has an implication for mathematics as well, because from now on all mathematics resource material was no longer posted out to students. Everything was just on the learning management system, and students had the responsibility to go and grab the information themselves. So we used a number of functions in the learning management systems to assist the students. So we recorded videos, and we recorded helpful media for them, audio recordings that they could listen to in the car or on the train, and podcasts that they can use on their mobile phones. And that helped a lot. The feedback that we got from students is, of course, that a video is very patient and forgiving, and you can view the video over and over again, and the video won't get mad at you. So they really enjoyed that. It did present us with a few technical challenges for those unsavvy students, the tech unsavvy students, the ones that, let's call them, are not familiar with online submissions, or maybe not familiar with the social media of the day. They had to learn new skills, all right? So navigating the learning management system, they had to locate the resource material online and become familiar with how to do things in the new world. They also had to now start printing their own resource material, which created a little bit of pushback from the students, because there's a cost implication of printing, let's say, 100 pages in color of a study guide. And in the old days, we used to send that out. So we had to negotiate around that, and it's taken a while for the students to accept the new way of doing it. From a mathematics point of view, the lecturers had to redevelop some of the material, and of course we had to decide exactly how we are going to allow the completing of the assessment items, those tests that we spoke of earlier on. The key thing here was all submissions had to be electronic, and that meant that handwritten submissions had to be converted into electronic format, and of course students, being very enterprising, came up with quite a number of different solutions to that. So the limitations that we had to overcome in terms of students and staff, the learning management system design, we had to come up with an integrated design that's consistent, that allowed the students to always find the right information at the same place. So that takes away the extraneous load from the students, so that they can easily find the stuff that they need to complete the work. For our lecturers, they had to move away from the hard copy idea. We've always been doing it for this, like this for the last 30 years. Why should we change now? And once we get past that, there's an initial workload increase because everything had to be redone. Just taking a PDF online isn't necessarily the best way of taking a resource online. It's basically not the real way that we wanted to do it. However, once you've gone through that process, there's the possibility of recycling of that resource material next year. So it does become a little bit easier as we move down the line. So the student feedback that we had to provide to them after the submission, everything had to be electronic as well, and we played around with different options, and all of these things went into our experiment. We had to play around with standard annotations in PDF. Then we started doing video recordings and providing some video with annotations on the assessment items. That proved very effective but time consuming. And we also tried the tablet PC simulating a paper environment. So, and that had really good results at the end of the day. So when we look at the study in overview, it runs for basically a full year from term 3 2012 until term 3 2013. And this presentation focuses mainly on the preliminary results, as we are not yet at the end of term 3 2013. When we look at the participants for the study, all of the students that's enrolled in the CQ Uni Enabling Mathematics courses, they were eligible to take part and they were invited, so it was a voluntary participation. And so far we've had basically 157 participants in the project. The demographics, diverse. Alright, so really geographically dispersed, because now that everything is online, the market's a lot bigger, there's a lot more access. It's easier for somebody from different states across the world to join in on the online fun that we're having in mathematics. The ages that we've recorded is between 17 and the oldest student was 58, which is quite impressive. It's basically for the 58-year-old a formalization or a formalization of their career, coming back to university, getting a degree, finalizing that, and then of course the educational background, very diverse. We have people that have grade 12, left school early, people that's been in the workforce for many years, people that's approaching retirement. So different people, different approaches that we had to take into account for the study. So when we look at the aims that we basically wanted to satisfy with this experiment or this project, was to determine if the online submission for mathematics courses was actually something that would work. Right, so that was our main purpose, because it's a new principle that we had to do. In the old days, as I said, we had hard copy. Now we went away from that. Would students be able to cope with that transition? Would they be able to manipulate the material in order for them to actually submit a submission on time? And then of course, how easy is it for them to negotiate and navigate the process? Do they write it out? Do they take a photo of it? Do they scan it? Where do they find a scanner? Do they print it out? Do they get a confirmation email? How do they interact with the learning management system? All of those questions start playing a role when we think about student attrition and student retention. Then of course the last aim that we had, with the onset of mobile applications, what is available out there to make a student's life easier? In the old days, when you went to the bush, you had a GPS and a phone and a camera, and these days you just have a phone, and the phone is the GPS, and the phone is the camera, and the phone is also a phone. All right, so it's fulfilling multiple functions, and there's nothing stopping us from using that in an educational environment. So of the 157 students, only one student decided to type out the submission. All right, so all of the other 156 said no, they're quite happy to write it out and then scan it, photograph it, or get it into that Word document some other way. And it was interesting to see that only one of those students actually decided, oh, okay, I'm going to use the Microsoft Word formula typing mechanism to provide an answer. So we did ask a few questions, and I'm just going to touch on one or two of those preliminary results. So we asked students, what kind of electronic devices that they had to use, realizing that not all of them had access to an office environment where they might have scanners or any other devices that can be used in that manner. So you can see there that quite a number of them said scanners would be the main way of getting that information in there, and of course mobile phones featured as well, and then a few others had document cameras and stuff like that as part of their solution. But the majority of the students said that they just used a scanner and that created a PDF, and the PDF then could be submitted into the learning management system. So students used various mobile platforms, so both iOS and Android, and a few of the packages that they use: Scan Pro, PDF Reader, it's an iPhone app, JotNot Pro, and there's a few of those students that was just, they couldn't be bothered about different apps and stuff, so they just used a normal photo and then emailed the photo to themselves and then imported that photo into a Microsoft Word document and then submitted the Word document. So there's different ways of skinning the cat, and the students were quite ingenious about how they went around the problem that they faced if they didn't have a scanner. So it's really starting to see, our students adapt to the different types of environments that they focus in. So we asked them a secondary question about, how easy is it to load it into the learning management system. Now there are different learning management systems around the world, but all of them basically have the same components, so I guess this will be the same for the majority of these systems. And a lot of the students did notify and say yes, this was not difficult at all. They did make a few comments on the process itself about, are there anything that we can make better. So we also asked them, would you consider typing it, going into a Word or a different package maybe, and seeing if you can type out the answer for us. And a number of them said yes, we'd consider that, but again the majority of them said why bother, if we can write it out, scan it. Mathematics is just one of those things that we like to do by hand, and it's easier if we can do it by hand. So the majority of them said no, we wouldn't consider it. And I think part of the reason for them saying no is because the learning curve in trying to understand exactly how to do it in Word. So when we look at the preliminary results for this project so far, as overall the students responded and said, yeah, we're okay with the process, and we're quite happy with the transition from hard copy into online environment. And some of the issues that they had is that, internet broadband connection, that is really important. You cannot do without it in an online educational environment anymore. And of course, one or two of the students provided us with a few hints. They said, well, a few of us are a little bit older than the rest of you, and we don't exactly know how the technology works. Would it be possible to present us with a class or a methodology statement that can take us through this process step by step? So these are all valid feedback items, and of course there were a few fringe factors sort of sitting on the side, and that was the students' resistance to changing from the old way of doing it into the new online environment. Now fortunately for us, as the new online environment starts rolling in, I think that resistance will change as the newer students roll into the system, and eventually there will not be any kind of resistance, because the previous way of doing things would just not be known. Alright, so far from our experiment, the conclusions that we've reached is basically that yes, we can, with a few minor modifications, pushes and shovers, we can use the online submissions, and we can overcome the issues with hardware and software in terms of scanning, in terms of getting that handwritten stuff into an electronic format. And then of course the second one is there that most of the students said yes, this is not a difficult process at all. It's quite easy, in fact, and we were quite amazed by the number of senior students in terms of age that responded and said yes, we can do it. We know that our mobile phones have cameras now and we can take photos, and it really makes the process easier at the end of the day. We only reported 9 of the students, or only 9 of the students reported that they used online apps, and I think that might increase as this is repeated, as the courses are repeated in time, and more students become aware of those different types of apps. Alright, so there we go. That's basically the main gist of our experiment. So thank you once again for your time, and our contact details are on the screen. I'm Joshua Pienaar.